Hey guys, Bix, we're roadtoruna.com. It has been so long since we got the privilege of talking to Andy Schectman. He's so busy. Everybody wants to talk to Andy. He's been so right about what's going on in the geopolitical world of gold and silver. And I'm happy things are going so well, but I miss you desperately.
Oh, Bix, there are very few people that I would break away at any point for, and you're at the top of the list. So thanks for inviting me in. It's good to see you again, brother, and hope all is well with you.
Things are great. Things are confusing on the road to Ruta in a certain way that I wanted to get your take on, and
Sure.
it's got to do with the retail investor demand, coins and bars, and the industrial demand. I mean, from what I can tell, there's hardly any retail demand and massive industrial. Is that
Yeah,
what you're
it's
seeing, and why is that?
yeah, it's true. I mean, it's the complete opposite in the equity market, which is actually, I think, stronger, makes a stronger statement. In the equity market, you have massive insider selling, and the big money, the insiders over the last 4 weeks, the institutional have sold 4.2 billion last week. Over the last 4 weeks, 2 billion per week, as the insiders are or excuse me, as the retail mom and pop are at the largest amount of stock exposure ever in history. They're all in on stocks, and that says something, I think, about where the direction of the stock market may be going. The
Yeah.
insiders know the scoop. Well, look at the same thing in reverse with the metals market, the biggest money in the world, the central banks, the sovereign wealth funds, the family offices, they are draining the world's exchanges, as you know, standing for delivery. The largest delivery in the history of the COMEX market, I believe, in both gold and silver, occurred in May. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure it did. About $8.5 billion worth of gold was delivered in May, about 4.5 in March. The biggest money in the world is accumulating gold and standing for delivery. And the odd thing about it, to your point, is that the retail investor is immersed in the risk on trade, immersed in traditional, equities and the traditional form of investing. And you have to wonder if the insiders are massively selling as the on equities as the retail investors are buying, but it's the opposite in gold and silver. Who's going to be right? And my guess is those closest to the information are right. And that to me is very telling. But yeah, you're right. The people on this side of the table in precious metals are missing out what's happening, and that's why we see the lowest premiums we've seen really in a very long time on metals. They're just it's a lack of demand on the retail side more than anything, which is very, very confusing and hard to understand when you see what's happening up there.
Yeah. Um, it's interesting because I just looked at this because I was like, I know it's been a huge year for COMEX gold and silver deliveries. And I wanted to look at the juxtaposition of the money. People say, oh my God, the big month of March, silver was 80 million ounces. If you count the micro contract or whatever they call it, it's 82 million. And that's $2.7 billion worth of silver. Now, people are like, oh my God, that's so much silver. And I'm thinking in my head, we got two industrial or two monetary metals. There's gold and there's silver. February did 22 billion of gold deliveries. And you look at that and you're like, holy crap. That's 8-to-1 ratio. So I get all these things going in my head. One, 2.7 billion is not a lot of money in the financial world. Not a lot at all. Are people really that stupid when the big money when they look at gold and silver? We know historically gold and silver have always been monetary metals. The reason that people are thinking silver is more of an industrial metal now is because we've been conditioned to think that. The
Yeah.
price of silver has been rigged for so long, it's trading at still way below its all-time high from 1980. So that people chase price because they've been holding down the price of silver for literally 180 years, people have not gravitated towards silver. All it takes is one multi-billionaire to say, hey, this is bullshit. The price of silver should be quadruple, 10 times, 20 times, 50 times what it is today. I'm not an idiot investor. I'm going to jump in and buy what's cheap today compared to what was cheap in 1980. And the whole concept of that not hitting the retail side, to me, it baffles me, other than looking at some of the industrial side. We have the largest COMEX deliveries of silver in history this year. We're going to break all records. We got the largest LBMA. The LBMA in the last 6 months has jumped from an average of 200 million ounces net transfers in 6 months ago to 340 million ounces of silver every day, every single day. At some point, you got to think, holy crap, massive amounts of physical are moving. In India, India just announced they had 17 million ounces imported on a month of May that the price didn't move. That's unheard of in India because they only buy when the price is slammed below the moving averages. So everything is just screaming to me that silver, all it takes is one spark to set off the silver literal moonshot that everybody's been begging for. And it's not going to happen on the retail side. That's small potatoes compared to what happens. We're talking hundreds of millions of ounces going to India and to China and all that. I'm of the opinion that the retail side will be chasing silver well after $50. What do you
You know,
think?
I'd be curious to your take on the post that Chris Marcus put out last week, and I've always admired Chris's ability to chase down the story from an investigative journalistic standpoint. He's one of the best in this space, and he was talking about the fact that when you have large short positions on Comex, that they're supposed to typically be offset with long positions in London, and he was framing it with the respect that if indeed the massive short position, the second largest ever in the history of the Comex by the commercial banks that we see right now, if indeed it really is offset in London, where we're told they have somewhere in the neighborhood of a 250 million ounce float. If they're offset, he was saying that that means there's only 7 million ounces in London that is not encumbered, something to that extent. And if it's not offset, if it's not hedged in London, that means a bank like Bank of America, typically something like that. According to Ted Butler, when he was alive, he would have said it would be Bank of America. But that means that there are banks or a bank that are wickedly, wickedly exposed to a rise. And maybe that's why we've seen on Wednesday of last week 487 million ounces on paper traded. And on Friday, 356 million ounces. They are trying by trading 800 million ounces over 2 days to keep the price below $37 for sure. But I'm curious to your take on that. Do you think that what Chris is saying has some validity?
They definitely, especially with the added exchange for physical mechanism on the comics, that you can exchange a comics contract for a LBMA contract instead of delivering. So yes, there's definitely a lot of give and take as to. I mean, both of them are fake markets. Just everybody needs to understand there's no way in the world that the LBMA transfers 347 million ounces per day on the comic. That's just it's such a ridiculous comment that you got to wonder, okay, we know LBMA is not an exchange, it's an association. It's not, free and open. They control the people who set the price there. The Comex, I would say 90 to 95% of all trades on both exchanges are just the same banks trading back and forth with each other, setting the price, colluding. As far as how much is left, if they are offset, it is very possible because we do see, I am seeing these days, because I've been watching Bank of America. When Ted was talking about Bank of America in the early days, I was watching the commitment or the OCC report on derivatives. And it's true. They leased or borrowed 1.2 billion ounces of physical silver from JP Morgan after JP Morgan was shut down by the Trump administration for rigging the price of silver in the past. But also, I talked to Ted many times about how much physical silver, while JP Morgan was keeping suppressing the price of silver, which they got busted for, and literally they have a felony against them. One guy's, I think, still in jail. the reality is it went to Bank of America, but then Bank of America sublease that to other players. Now, who are those other players is the question. One of them is Wells Fargo. And we've been seeing all year Wells Fargo in the non delivery months take as much physical silver as possible. And then in the delivery month, they have to pony up that silver, meaning that they have short positions on throughout the year and maybe 2 or 3 years that they don't have the metal for. They had to pick it up in the previous months, and they're doing the same thing this month. So if we see next month that Wells Fargo is one of the big deliverers again, and Wells Fargo was not a player in silver before the whole Bank of America thing. So it's a situation where they're playing derivative games. JP Morgan leases, a massive amount of silver to Bank of America. We don't know what kind of lease it is. It could be a fair market value lease where they have to return it, or it could be a fixed purchase option lease, which is part of it because JP Morgan booked that $1 billion gain. And if you have a fixed purchase price at the end of a lease, you got to book the gain in the beginning. If you don't, it's just an operating lease, and you can stretch it out as long as you want. So there's all these. The derivative book is going crazy. I'm seeing banks pop in that we haven't seen before with huge silver deliveries. Remember, every Comex delivery bank at the time of the close of the contract was a short position that wasn't closed out. So we see who it is on the Comex. Obviously, the JP Morgan quote customer. It went from JP Morgan house account to JP Morgan customer when JP Morgan got busted. And so, that who is that is probably, subsidiaries of JP Morgan or BlackRock, and they're all working together and they're all colluding. We all know that. So I do think Chris there's something to it. There are banks that played this game with Bank of America, JP Morgan, and they're finding out that, oh shit, I got to, they love it in the beginning because they get the silver at a cheap lease rate. They sell it and they basically have cheap capital when interest rates were up there at 5, 6, 7, 8%. Right? They
Right.
got cheap capital. They can put on a 2 year, they can run that money. They can buy treasuries. They can do anything they want because they're getting leased silver at 1% or 0%, and then they're selling it using that cash. But it all falls apart at the end when you got to pay the physical silver back. You can't just buy off a contract or close out a lease without returning the silver. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. And I think it can be seen in how much struggle these shorts are having to fulfill what is due every month on the Comex.
Well, and it's funny, and although they didn't speak directly to silver, although I would argue the silver is the exact same thing, in fact, on steroids, the ECB warned that gold is a threat to the global financial system. I'll just read something to you real quick. I'm sure you saw this. Last month, the ECB, the European Central Bank, warned of increasing counterparty risk in gold derivatives for the euro area. In the May edition of the Financial Stability Review, the ECB added that a significant share of these gold derivatives were over the counter and not centrally cleared, leaving actors exposed to counterparty risk. As you said, the LBMA is not an exchange, it's an over the counter system, I guess you call it. The big point to take on board is an official recognition that the stand for delivery obligations on Comex are behind the crisis, and they continue. Since November, warehouse stock has shown 26,470,000 ounces have stood for delivery. Eurozone banks have swapped gold for paper, and the gold is disappearing in deliveries. Behind the ECB's public concern is a far deeper one. It is as close as we can get to official warning that the gold paper game is coming to a very nasty end, likely to drive gold measured in paper currencies far, far higher. And incidentally, the same problem exists in silver, but without the central bank participation, more of a commercial bank, which means it's an existential threat to some of these banks if the shit hits the fan. That's in essence what you are saying, correct?
It is, and that gold, it's interesting because people don't. I mean, ever since the GATA days when I was like, hey, there might be a hell of a lot more gold than what we've been told. And there's like, Bix, what are you talking about? That's blasphemy, and they kicked me out of GATA, kind of. Not Chris and not Bill, but the rest of the guys were like, yo, he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. So then we find out, yeah, there's a hell of a lot more gold. People still don't understand that there's one of the problems with gold, I think, is that we don't know how much there is. You can believe there's 220,000, 230,000 tons that's ever been mined. and you can believe that till you're blue in the face. Jim Sinclair was saying, "Hey, the Chinese are taking 2,000 tons every year for the past 50 years." I mean,
He
that
was right.
tells you right now there's something wrong with the gold market. Um, and on the flip side, gold, absolutely, the banks have a lot of gold. They want that price to go up, so they're allowing it the price of to go up. I mean, and they set the price on the COMEX and the LBMA with the futures and options. They don't have a lot of silver. That's why they're not allowing it to go up. And now they're stuck with this massive silver short. That I think the only way to get rid of that silver short in a kind of way that doesn't destroy everything, which I don't quite think there is a way to do that, is to shut down the COMEX and the LBMA. Um, to do that, and it would be obviously some kind of crisis. Maybe we go to war and say, oh, we're just going to pause trading for a little bit, and then they never open up again. But these are the exchanges that got the banksters and the global system in what $3 quadrillion worth of derivative trouble. I mean, everybody and derivatives don't do well in volatile markets, as we saw in 2008. I
Right.
think we have many banks blowing up behind the scenes right now, and it just has yet to come to the surface. The farther we go through this year, as war and other things, which we'll talk about offline, the war and the riots and how much of this is planned and has been planned for a very long time, as the end game. And I do think it has to do with gold and silver and the control of all markets via computers and derivatives. But yeah, that's just the
Well,
concern.
and that's why I think we're seeing a shift. You know, now you have Singapore getting into the game and opening up a market, a gold market. They want pricing authority to shift towards Asia. And I think that's what is happening, whether it be with the Shanghai Metals Exchange, now an exchange that's being developed in Singapore, the BRICS exchange. There's no question that I think they've realized for a very long time that the pricing power, the the West monopoly on metals pricing and settlement is something that they realize is a scam. And I think that buyers in Asia aren't just looking for better pricing; they're seeking autonomy. They're seeking the ability to set the prices. This is a big deal that I think people are missing. And even when the BRICS grain exchange was developed last year, the guy that is behind it said, you know, we in the global South produce and consume more grain than the West does, but we can't control the price. It's done on COMEX. But with the development of this grain exchange, that will change. I think you could say the same thing here about the move eastward, and that's one of the scary things about the recklessness of the Western policies that are allowing the exchanges to be drained and flowing eastward to countries like India, countries like China, countries like Saudi Arabia and Russia, and all of the countries that understand what silver represents, standing for delivery. And maybe by the grace of God, someone in the Trump's administration said, look, we've got to do the same thing here. We're in big trouble. Hence, all of the deliveries we're seeing. I don't know, Bix. I know you had me on your show, but I'll ask you. I mean, when do we see the price suppression end? What does it take for this to be overwhelmed? For these banks to realize that this isn't just stupid; it's an existential threat to their survival. Are we getting there? Are we almost there?
It's hard to believe that we're getting there with Bissett in as Treasury Secretary. He is George Soros's. I mean, he was George Soros's right hand man for decades. And the Trump administration, whether or not you love him or hate him, they are the biggest riggers of all the riggers. So I mean, I love Trump in so many ways, but the most important way to get back to freedom is free markets. And we don't have them. We are far from them in every single category. And the world knows it. And they're handing us our lunch by taking physical delivery of metals, opening up their own exchanges. They know we're going down.
Yes,
They know
that's
our,
exactly it.
yeah. So we
I
are,
think that should be the title of this podcast. That these countries are handing us our lunch, and they are. And I've been screaming that, and you have too. That's the part I hope people can understand, that it's not always price that is the determining factor. Do you see us waking up one morning? In other words, instead of it being a slow drip like we've seen it now move up, 32, 33, et cetera, 34. Or do we wake up one morning and it's 50 or 60 or 70 or 80 or whatever that number is? Do you see that happening?
I see neither. What I see is wake up one morning and there is no price. And we see that people understand that the United States of America, along with every other country, has been printing quadrillions of dollars behind the scenes and not telling people. I mean, Elon just found these 14 computers, and they've been printing money from nothing. And they didn't announce. I think Elon is starting to hint at, oh, by the way, this isn't a couple $100 billion to the Democrats. This is trillions of dollars, which would destroy the monetary system. And it's not just the United States; it's Russia, it's China, it's every country on the planet is is telling you how much they print, but in actuality, it's unlimited. It's infinity money. That's what Ruta wrote in the sand in the original Road to Ruta comic books. It's if as long as people believe the system, we're in a faith system, and there's not much faith in any government anymore to do what they're supposed to do. And now they're going to resort to blowing each other up and taking us along with them because that's what they do when the banks get in trouble. And we are seeing that every which way. And if Trump gets dragged into this, it's an in game. I do think we're just going to literally we'll have a default of someone like J.P. Morgan or Citibank or Bank of America. A too big to fail bank goes, a derivative problem destroys everything. It's Buffett's weapon of mass financial destruction. We'll wake up one morning and not be able to function um, monetarily, and there'll be no stock market price that won't be open. And what did they say in 2008? We were a couple hours away from that scenario.
Yeah.
Um, Senator Ken
We were
Dorsey.
staring into the abyss, I think they said.
Yeah. They said it would be 2 or 3 hours and Europe would have failed, and then the next day the United States would have failed. That type of thing. And what does that mean? It means it's out there and it's just gotten worse. The derivative bubble went from 2 quadrillion in 2008 to 3 quadrillion is the latest estimate. And that's a number you just can't recover from. And that's not even right either because they're creating things out of thin air. The 14 computers that Elon found probably did what, 5 trillion each. And where'd that money go? It went to whoever's running that printing press. Whatever deep state entity is running the game at the moment. So yeah, I think it's not going to be a slow trickle. I think people will understand just how much fraud is in the system now on every front, stock market, bond market, the amount of money printed by every nation, and then the fact that they're going to take us to war to get us out of it. It should scare everybody in the world. And then they're causing homeland strife with this bullshit, stuff that they're creating. The deep state is creating this fight against, no kings. It's just crazy. And I heard one of the tactic was to for the weekend to tell all the restaurants and everything that, oh, ICE is coming to this restaurant just to get people freaked out. And that's, you get the people out and it's just mass hysteria, mass delusion. It's like I don't know how to frame it better than to say they are playing right into the deep state playbook of chaos. And what happens with chaos, you turn to your government. I think we're not going to turn to the government. I don't think people like government anymore. And when we find out, when all the truth bomb comes out about who these people are, I think that's when we say, oh, holy crap, it's
Well,
over.
yeah, and you get the mainstream media's borderline compulsive deception, and this that what I'm going to say here is fact, and it's not conjecture, and it's not inflammatory at all. I just think what I think of the world that you and I grew up in. We're very close to the same age. I'll read you one paragraph, get your take on this. To your point, earlier this week, ABC journalist Jory Rand sought to reframe the escalating violence on the streets of LA, even as his own channel broadcasts images of cars completely engulfed in flames, the thick black smoke billowing into the night air. Nothing there was a noting there that there was a large group of people running wild, Rand said. It could turn very volatile if you move law enforcement in there the wrong way and turn what is just a bunch of people having fun watching cars burn into a massive confrontation and acceleration between officers and demonstrators. Now, that's how the media portrays this. Just a bunch of people having fun watching cars burn. But if you bring in law enforcement, well, it could turn violent. Again, to your point, you can't make this stuff up, and it's very difficult. And that's why people aren't aware of the things that you and I talk about, the things that are so logical to us and to your listeners, because they're being gaslit by a media that would go as far as saying it's a peaceful protest and just a bunch of people having fun watching cars burn. But if you bring in law enforcement, watch out, it's going to get violent. Now, I don't understand that, and I have a hard time even saying it and rationalizing it, but that's the world we find ourselves living in. Let's just hope somehow, some way that we're able to look back at this and say, how did we ever get here? Thank God we found a way out of it. I sometimes I wonder after watching all the chaos we've seen the last several days.
Yeah, I'm 100% in agreement. And there's a lot of things I can't say on YouTube. I say it on the private road to Ruta, especially about the latest assassination of a political person. Um, it was so obvious to me what it was. I Let's not talk about it, but go to roadruta.com, go check that out. Um,
Sure, absolutely.
let's I want to finish off with the U.S. Mint. At one point, the
Yeah,
U.S. Mint was by far the best mint in the world. They supplied all the Silver Eagles necessary to meet demand. They
yep.
had wonderful products, fairly priced. They were literally looked up at upon as this is the gold standard of what a mint should be. Now it is looked up as a complete piece of shit mint, and I am so livid. They did a website revamp. It is the worst website ever known to man. They took out the historical Silver Eagle sales, and they are just putting the 2025 sales up for some reason. They have not sold a Silver Eagle in June. Sold 700,000 in uh, May. They are on track to be the lowest Silver Eagle sales in history, and yet we're still on allocation. Andy, could you explain to the public what the fuck is going on at the Mint?
No, I really can't because it defies logic. It's as if they are trying to. I mean, you could argue they've been the model of inefficiency for a long time. They're trying to perhaps uh, just get the littlest amount of silver, like your interview, the interview that you did that I think everyone needs to listen to, the 2 part interview or 3 part interview, Jack Sermon, I think his name was,
Yep.
and it's one of the two go-to interviews that I would tell anyone who wants to know what's going on to listen to. And in it, when he said, I was told by my superiors to only produce just enough Silver Eagles to not create a backlash, a what am I trying to say? A media backlash or something that we're going to have to try and quell. Well, that's obviously what they're doing. And because everything else premium wise has reacted far differently than the American Eagles, which have maintained their premium, not high premium, but higher than everything else simply because the demand is or the supply is not meeting demand. And which is weird because there's plenty of product on everything else, but Silver Eagles have really been that one item that has maintained demand, but the supply just isn't where we would expect it to be. I don't know. I guess I take a lot from that interview that you did with Jack, and I never thought I would hear a Mint official say he was told by his superiors, and I don't know who those superiors would be. I doubt it would have been the lady that used to run it, the HR lady. I forget her name,
Citrus
but
Gibson.
yeah, whatever Gibson. But I think it would be more along the lines of the Treasury Secretary who would have given him those instructions. But yeah, there's no question, really. I mean, you look, they haven't even made a platinum eagle yet this year, and you can see that they're very, very inefficient. But it's almost as if maybe they are restocking the American government, perhaps, and using stupid excuses and lack of transparency and the admission by Jack that yeah, just make as little as possible without creating a backlash that they're doing. Maybe they realize along with all these imports and deliveries into the United States that we have allowed this to become a very detrimental situation to the safety of the country, that we are woefully understocked in things like gold and silver, and that's why they're delivering it into the system. Maybe it is the Treasury that is behind all of these big deliveries, and on one hand, we can't make the admission that we're woefully underprepared for the future as it pertains to something as strategic, not just industrial, but strategic as silver, and at the same time let it all go out the back door to the American public. So, I mean, that would be the only thing that would make sense to me, Bix. I can't think of any other reason why they would go to such great lengths to keep silver eagles from the public when it's in the const or in the law, the charter of the mint, that they're supposed to produce as many as is demanded by the public, which they clearly haven't for the better part of 5 years.
Yeah, and I don't think it's the stockpiling thing. I think that's the stockpiling thing is happening, has been happening for decades. That's another part of like the road to Ruta stuff. We are moving back to gold and silver standard. The United States has been preparing for this since the creation of the Fed. How many gold and silver coins we have is unknown. But
Then why would they do it?
here's my answer. The Silver Eagle program was the most popular retail silver program in the world for a very long time since its creation in 87. It literally they were doing 50 up to 50 million ounces 2013-14 timeframe, consistently over 30 million ounces. When I talked to Jack Sermon, he said he could easily do 35 million ounces. Um, that if you want to stop retail buyers, you take away their favorite investment, and that's what they did. They basically, when Ventris Gibson came in, appointed by Joe Biden, they basically stopped, or they told Jack Sermon, the head of Silver Eagle sales, to stop making Silver Eagles. What would that do? When David Ryder was in right before that, we were building up. We did 30 and then 32 million. We're building up to 50 million again. And they literally put a stop to it. And that's about when the retail investors stopped. The retail investors started dying after 2021, and all of a sudden everything was different. You can blame COVID, you can blame whatever you want. The industrial went crazy. We were sitting here today where on the US Mint website, they're selling silver products, not the bulk eagles. They're selling silver products for 3 times the price of silver. They're
Mhm.
price gouging the American public. According to the American Eagle law, they are required by law to provide silver and gold eagles at cost with no
Yeah.
markup. That is the law. And they're at least in silver, they are required to buy that silver anywhere in the world. With gold, they're supposed to get it from domestic sources, but Jack said they weren't. But they're supposed to legally. With silver, it was different. It was there they can source those products, that silver, the silver blanks, the planchettes, from anywhere in the world. Now it has to be the quality and all that. And I talked with the Sunshine Mint guy, and the reality was he said, well, the demand went down, and they didn't want as much silver, so we had to get different customers. The United States Mint is also required by law to bid more than anybody else for those silver blanks. That is the law. The law says, it doesn't say, well, if the price of silver blanks gets too expensive, you don't have to make them. No, that is not what the law says. They are required by law to make silver eagles to meet customer demand. Period. And just because it's Bassett now who gets to decide whether or not we're meeting demand, it doesn't matter. We know we're not meeting demand because we've been on allocation for what, 10 years now? Something crazy like that. Allocation means if you want to go in there with a big order, you only get up to what you're allocated. And these are the authorized dealers. And do you know what the markup is right now on Silver Eagles at that level from the mint to the authorized purchasers?
I would say it's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $2.50 or 60 cents, right in that neighborhood over spot. And this is where it gets crazy because when they run out of product, as they've shown the propensity to do continuously, and the primary distributors have it all, this is where the markup becomes absurd.
Right.
But that goes both ways, buy and sell. It's not at my level, it's at the level one above me, the primary distributors. We're an authorized reseller, which is one step below the primary distributors. They're the ones who will spend 50, 60, $70 million indiscriminately on this stuff, on Silver Eagles. Take everything that they can give on allocation. They all do that. So the mint's now out of product. And in essence, they then become the market makers and control the price. So I want to say the mint charges between 240 and 260, somewhere in that neighborhood, I would think, to the primary distributors right now over
Yeah.
spot.
I think that's what Jack said at the time, which was a couple years ago. But he also said that wasn't cost. They were making a buck a coin on that, and I told him I'm like, you can't do that. It is literally it's written in the law what you have to charge for the Silver Eagles. It is cost plus it is cost. It is your cost. It is the price of the metal plus the cost to fabricate it plus whatever marketing you have to do. You cannot build in a margin, and it says it in the law, and yet they do it. And the mint made $100 million, I think, last year, or 90 million or something. And yes, they're marking up the uncirculated coins. What Jack said, they're putting all the silver that they get towards these other coins. The freaking
Morgans in the
yeah,
piece. Yeah.
yeah, coins that literally they're not required to make. A lot of them they aren't required to make. They mark them up so high they want the profit, is what he said.
Yeah. They can sell a third the silver and make the same amount as selling it all in
Yeah.
Eagles.
So they're
And,
gouging. They're price
it,
gouging.
it reminds me of the cop that I saw in the gas station not too long ago, around dusk, and one of his lights was out, his headlights. I said, sir, your headlights. I said, good thing I won't get pulled over. I laughed and he laughed, but it's true. It's like, who's going to do anything about it? I guess is the question. I think that's how brazen this has all become. But yeah, to your point, Bix, um, on everything, there's far greater demand up top, but you can see it. You can see it through the massive purchases, the massive deliveries, and then the repatriation, whether it be taking it off the exchanges or central banks bringing it home, removing counterparty risk. And to your point, yes, I mean, the demand is still pretty good on the retail level in comparison to where it was most of the time that I've known you over the last 20 plus years. But by the same token, it represents such a tiny, tiny bit of the mainstream. Um, they haven't realized it yet. They really haven't. And so yeah, what is very available and flush right now can very quickly change. We've seen that happen. Silicon Valley Bank failed. We added 14,000 clients in 45 days. That's 4 years worth of client acquisition in 45 days. But that's really the kind of environment we find ourselves in, where the public isn't thinking, they're not forward thinking, they're not looking at this. They think the road to retirement is paved with stock certificates and mutual funds, which, to my point earlier, you have a record participation by the public in equities right now. At the same time, it's record accumulation on physical metals by the insiders. And so they flip flop. The insiders are out in equities and in commodities, and the retail public is all in equities and really pretty much out in as it pertains to commodities, at least on a large scale. So what does that portray for the future? Well, I'll leave that up to everyone else to decide. But we need people like you to keep giving us this information, the facts, the figures, and being there to hold all of our hands, because it is tough. It's tough for a lot of people to see the counterintuitive nature. What we see today, where oil was way down, the dollar was up, gold and silver, well, at last I looked, silver was up a little bit, but gold was down. Here we are filming, uh, in the middle of this escalation in the Middle East, and gold's down $35, silver's up 4 cents. But things are counterintuitive to the way we would think it would be to react in terms of reaction. But that's all done as part of the gaslighting, as part of the cartel 101 playbook. Um, I, for one, thank God every day for people like you who are making my job a little bit easier to try and get the information out, because you're right, these are challenging times for most people, and harder yet, the mainstream media doesn't do anything to open people's eyes to what is happening. So that's why we need you and others like you and me to continue to scream. I don't know how many people are listening, but I hope enough to, we help just a couple. That to me is great, and I'll continue to do it. And I love coming on your show, and I'll continue to come on whatever you ask me, because people like you that I've been following forever, that has motivated me to do what I do.
Well, one thing I want to leave us with, I have been involved with the Bitcoin frenzies. The times it runs up, people get in when things run up, and they have literally billions of dollars to get in with because they are not in that sector. And more people, there's tens, 20s, maybe 100 millions of people now in the crypto sector. And I've seen those frenzies, and they are all caused, 100% of them are caused by rising price. When we see silver break over $50, we're going to see a serious influx of people trying to get in on something that they have not been involved in. And it's not like you have 50 different choices when it comes like in cryptos where they can put their money. I think people look at gold and silver, but silver especially, and the amount of money trying to get in as the price runs over $50 will be shocking. And that's how you get to
Yeah.
thousands of dollars in silver price. Um, but basically, to me, it is because of the control of the price of silver. Nobody knows about it. And still to this day, I'll walk down the street and more people know about cryptos than know about silver. And
Mhm.
and more people own cryptos by far than silver. And I'm like, it shocks me to my core. And I'm telling everybody, I've been involved in the frenzies in crypto. The frenzy in silver will be different because it is one market. It is one, and in cryptos you can get as many as you want. You can't in silver. It will go to unobtainium, as Cliff High calls it, which is a value that I said, I'll give you anything you want for an ounce of silver. And the dealer says, I don't have an ounce of silver. I'm looking for them myself. And that's, I think, is headed our way very fast. And we will see when the comic shuts down. I think it will take the comic shutting down because that's where they can short Infinity Silver. But I think we're getting there, and it'll be very interesting to ride that wave as it crests and just washes over everybody. And you got crypto people saying, "I'll give you, a Bitcoin for an ounce of silver. What would it take?" So I'm interested to see that move because silver hasn't really gotten that since 1980.
Well, you'll be vindicated. That I do know, Vix, and I'll be right there with you. And um, keep doing what you're doing, brother. And again, thank you for having me on. And know that I'm always just a text away. I love being on your show. Love being part of what you're doing. And you're a class act all the way around.
Thank you, thank you. Tell everybody you got new studio coming in. Tell everybody how to get physical silver from you and what you guys are doing these days.
Yeah, we have a new studio. It's I showed it to you. It's done. It'll be they're putting the finishing touches on it by next week. We're going to do our first show. I have a lot of new announcements I told you about. I can't tell the public about until next week. The best way to reach us is to send us an email, and in the subject line say Bix sent me to info at milesfranklin.com. We will send you our price list where our prices will be as good or better than anyone in America. Things like pre-65 silver, which I know you like, right now 99 cents over spot. It's as good of a deal as anything in the industry, anything. Um, Available for immediate delivery, and everything we have right now is flush, and we're choking on supply, to be honest with you, for the first time in quite some time. So you want prices or questions on anything that you've seen on this show or anything else, IRAs, anything, info at Miles Franklin, no obligation. If you want to be contacted, put it in there, put your phone number down, we'll call you. If you don't, you can say, don't want to be contacted, just want to see the price list. We respect people's privacy, but info at Miles Franklin is the best way. One of these days, you and I will sit down and I will explain to everyone why I don't publish my prices really extensively the way that I do on this sheet that they just have to request. And there are reasons behind it. It allows us to be very competitive. So info at Miles Franklin, price sheet, any questions, Vic sent me in the subject line would be very helpful. And we'll make sure and roll out the red carpet for your listeners as always, and make sure that they don't become that first customer complaint that we've never had in 35 years.
That's awesome. I would like to recommend the Road to Ruta members who own physical gold in their possession. The gold silver ratios, I don't in the 90s somewhere. Andy will do swaps, gold for silver.
Yep.
Obviously, there's commissions involved, but contact Andy and see what you can do because I think anything over 10 to 1 is a no-brainer in my book right now. And we're up in the 90s, which is crazy for the gold silver ratio. Yeah, that's
We will buy that back. We charge no commission on the buyback. We'll guarantee the highest bid price in the country. We'll make something on the silver side. The only thing that really, in my mind, is of consideration is taxes at these higher levels when you sell gold, paying your capital gains. If it's in an IRA, that's the sweet spot because you can trade it, no taxes, get the silver, no storage requirements. And then the key to the precious metals IRA is the ability to, if you wish, take delivery of the metal down the road. It is a taxable event. If you're over 59 and a half, you can say, send me all my silver and they'll send it to you. You'll pay taxes if you cashed out your IRA. But whether it be in an IRA or in your personal holdings, we will help you. We'll help you with insured shipment. We'll answer all your questions, no obligation. That would be our privilege. And yeah, you're right. It is the perfect time to do the gold to silver swap, at least from a historical standpoint. It's screaming. So yeah, we're very adept at that and can help from start to finish and make it as easy as can be.
wonderful. Andy Schectman from Miles Franklin, thank you, sir. Hopefully, we will see you very soon. And keep an eye on gold and silver, my friends. This is the hot spot. This is an exciting time for us. Andy, thank you so much. And
Love you, big.
we'll see you soon.
Yeah, brother. Take it easy.
All right. Bye bye.